Okay. Welcome everybody to the Building Resilient Show. And we in this show always are showcasing people that have incredible stories. I have a guest today here that it's funny because the original intention was me interviewing him, but with all the things that are happening right now in Venezuela, the people that know me that I'm Venezuelan born, and that I was a hostage of Maduro and all things that's happening with Maduro right now, that conversation is going to be flipping around what is going in Venezuela. So I'm going to bring a guest here. There is his name. He has a real name, but he uses his name like Etienne de la Bois. Is that way you pronounce it?
Etienne de la Boissy
De la Boisie.
squared.
Okay, square.
Yeah.
Very difficult. Etienne de la Boisie. So I'm gonna no, without no further ado, give the mic to him to introduce himself and why he used this name.
I'm best known as as the author of a book called "Government: The Biggest Scam in History Exposed," and I'm the founder of the Art of Liberty Foundation. And at the Art of Liberty Foundation, we are principled voluntarists. We don't believe in the legitimacy, the necessity, and the desirability of having a government. And the original Etienne de la Boissy was famous. He was a French political philosopher. He was a magistrate. He was a poet. He wrote in the 1500s, and he was really the first one to expose the illegitimacy of government and the tricks and the techniques that rulers use, not just to get obedience, but to get fealty and adoration. And so I'm doing his work in the modern age, and with my book "Government: The Biggest Scam in History" and my new book "To See the Cages, to Leave It: 25 Techniques the Few Use to Control the Many." I'm exposing a number of unethically manipulative techniques that the U.S. government and other governments, including the government in Venezuela, are using on their population to get them to go along with having a ruling class, to get them to go along with having a corrupt banking system, to get them to go along with having resources stolen from them in the name of the government, supposedly to be socialized for the people, but all pigs are equal and some pigs are more equal than others. And so it frequently doesn't make it to the people. But that's really the basic of my work. Is my thesis is that government is a technique that is being used to rob and control us, and we would all be dramatically wealthier, and there would be much more harmony and prosperity in a world without government. That doesn't mean there wouldn't be cooperation. That doesn't mean that there wouldn't be roads. That doesn't mean that there wouldn't be everything that you would expect in a modern society. But in a voluntarist world, all of that is provided by the free market, by mutual aid societies, by co-ops, by nonprofits, by legitimate, genuine charities. And essentially, the government's provider of services, and everything the government does would be done better, faster, and cheaper by the free market and free people. And so that is kind of the thesis of my work. And because I'm going to be broadcasting this for my audience, and we're going to be talking today about the situation in Venezuela, I would like for you to introduce yourself to my audience and tell everybody your background and a little bit about you.
Well, this is really funny. We're having this conversation today. Let me tell you to your audience, the people that are hearing me, I'm Venezuelan born. I'm Venezuelan born, and I came here to the U.S. because I used to work in the oil and gas during all my life. We're going to be talking about all this situation with the oil in Venezuela, and I
You're
was
being
getting
very humble. If you would you mind explaining what position you held?
well, I was the CEO of Citgo Petroleum here in the U.S. and did a long career in the oil and gas, so I know a little bit about what the oil plays in Venezuela.
And just
And
for my audience, could you explain Citgo's relationship to the Venezuelan government
yeah,
and
Citgo
what
Petroleum to the
a important
American
position that
audience.
is?
Yeah, Citgo Petroleum to the American audience. Everybody knows it because there's more than 6,000 gas stations here in the U.S. All the East Coast and all um, the border, in the north. It's all over the U.S. It's very big. But by the way, Citgo in the 80s had almost 1,400, 14,000 gas stations,
Mm.
had more franchise than McDonald's. Citgo is the sixth refinery complex here in the US. And the title to Venezuela is because it belongs to Venezuela. This is something that people doesn't know about. 100% of the ownership of Citgo is from PDVSA, that is the state-owned company of Venezuela. Many people here in the US doesn't know that.
Mm.
So I being the CEO during the first Trump administration, he was having issue with Maduro. That look how it finalized.
Mm.
But during those tensions days in 2017, I did a business trip to Venezuela and we were captured by Maduro and we were held hostage because they used us as political pawns and we stayed 5 years in Venezuela as a hostage of Maduro. So that was
It was
my
called the Citgo Six, correct? And there
yeah
were
yeah
six executives.
because we were six executive was the president and my five vice president. And when we flew, we were accused to be American spy. Of course, it was a false accusation. They only wanted to use us as pawns. And the press put us that name, Citgo Six, because we were six, yes.
So, so absolutely the absolute right person to have a fascinating conversation about what is going on in Venezuela and about what is what is the situation on the ground and the future of the oil business in Venezuela. Now, to kind of set the stage, what I wanted to do is I wanted to point out, there's a popular maxim here in the United States that all wars are bankers' wars. I think it came from Michael Rivero at whatreallyhappened.com, who did a documentary on the same name. But a lot of these, what I think most people don't realize is that oil is both a commodity and in many ways it is a currency.
Yeah.
And so in the United States, we're on something called the petrodollar system. And the short explanation of that for people that are unfamiliar is that in the 1970s, the last time the U.S. had a major bout of inflation, the way that they dealt with it, or one of the ways that they dealt with it, is they cut a deal with OPEC that oil transactions would only be denominated and done in U.S. dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And so countries that were oil importing countries had to buy and hold U.S. dollars to pay for their foreign oil purchases. I think OPEC got some guarantees of security. I think they got the ability, the CIA and the intelligence agency showed these feudal monarchies in the Middle East how to, create a state police apparatus to crack down on their internal dissent. They
Mm-hmm.
were taught how to propagandize their people so that they would, be able to stay in power using a lot of the tricks that we expose. And in exchange, all of these dollars that were slashing around the world now got absorbed, and now, in essence, the oil has become a proxy in many ways for the U.S. dollar. So the bankers get to keep printing U.S. dollars ad infinitum, and those dollars are absorbed and used into oil transactions when otherwise they wouldn't, because many countries don't want to be holding U.S. dollars, and many countries continue to abandon the U.S. dollar because it is losing so much value, because the banks through fractional reserve banking and the government through quantitative easing and market manipulations have been producing so many dollars that the dollar is losing value. And so who would want to hold on to it unless they didn't? And the gun that the U.S. that the banks have at the world is you don't get any oil if you're not going to take this U.S. dollar. Now, famously, before Maduro was kidnapped in Venezuela, and what looks like a deal with the vice president and the head of the Venezuelan military, two other leaders of oil-rich nations abandoned the dollar and were selling oil in other things than dollars. And for and I should have set the stage with that Maduro was selling oil and everything except the U.S. dollar.
He was using a money called a crypto money called cryptocurrency called Petro. He created something called Petro. But the
Mhm.
Petro didn't work, and finding they were using Bitcoin and a lot of cryptocurrency. But
And they were giving it away in exchange for my understanding is that they were essentially trading it for foreign exchange from with Russia and with the
Turkey,
and China.
Russia, Turkey, China. There was doing a lot of. The only thing with that is because there was a lot of lack of transparency the way they were handling this. So sometimes you didn't know where the money was going. That's what one of the points. The money was not coming to the country because the country was lacking of currency, lacking of everything. So they
Right.
were using the cryptocurrency. They was going somewhere else.
Now, but just to set the table, so the two previous oil-rich countries that abandoned the dollar was Saddam Hussein, very famously in October of 2000, converted his U.S. dollars. So he was under economic embargo and restrictions led by the UN. He was allowed to sell some oil, and that oil went into a program called the Oil for Food Program.
Mm.
And the Oil for Food Program at the time had $26 billion in US dollars that he very famously converted to euros. And the euro appreciated. He made money on the deal. It was a black eye for the US and the US dollar. And then in 2003, we invaded, deposed Saddam Hussein, and we restored Iraq to the Iraqi oil exports to being sold in US dollars. The second one was Muammar Gaddafi in 2009 was elected the chairman of the African Union.
Mm.
He was proposing a gold dinar, which would have been a regional currency backed by gold, backed by physical gold, including some tremendous reserves that he had built up using his oil exports. So he was buying gold. He was getting set up to have a to kind of to have a regional gold backed currency that would have been a really probably the world's largest commodity based currency. It would have been a revolution in monetary policy on the planet, and I think it would have soaked up a lot of investment, and it would have been a boon. And in 2011, we invade, we depose him. He's killed, and all of those gold reserves have disappeared after the invasion, and Libya is now back on a French plan called the CFA franc system, where 50% of their reserves are forced to be held in French francs. And so, kind of similar to the chicanery of the U.S. petrodollar, France's crooked bankers and France's crooked government are forcing their nation states and captured states to participate in the franc system the same way that the U.S. forces people to participate in the dollar system. And so all wars are bankers' wars, and now we have Maduro comes to power. And actually, I wanted to kind of turn it over to you, but let's go and give people a background, and let's start with the nationalization. Let's start with what the oil industry looked like pre-Chavez. Let's start with I'd like for you to just kind of explain, what was going on at the time. Were the people profiting from that? What happened? Like, bring us in, take us through Chavez, and then take us into Maduro, and then let's bring it up to modern time.
Let me go back even further because Venezuela has always been less 150 years has been really tied to the oil. Okay, so in the early 920 is when it really started the real Venezuelan oil production. It came, by the way, by that time was the time of the Royal Dutch Shell. That was the first company that came to Venezuela more than 100 years ago. Today is Shell, okay? By the time was Anglo Dutch company. If you see my second last name, Renwick, it's because my granddad was one of the guys that came with Shell. So I'm a fourth generation of oil workers. So I know a little bit about oil. so during 1920, it started the production of Venezuela. And in 1950, when after the war finishes, all this recomposition of all these companies that begin to come to produce to Venezuela, it had happened that Mexican Revolution. So many of the American companies that were expelled from Mexico landed in Venezuela. And by that time, there was a dictator in Venezuela. Venezuela has had a lot of dictators. There was a dictator called Juan Vicente Gomez that he embraced the American companies. Come to me. And that was the era of the concessions. So during that concession period, Venezuela became really very wealthy. In fact, at some point became to be the second oil producer of the world. So and the former company that before PDVSA was called Corporación Venezolana del Petróleo, and it began the thinking of that nationalize the oil production. So it came in the 1970s, a president of Venezuela called Carlos Andrés Pérez, that he took the decision to nationalize the oil production in 1977. So that was the first time that was nationalized in 1977. That time, they finished all the concessions and was created what they called the operators, that were Venezuelan companies. There were 4 Venezuelan companies, was Corpoven, Lagoven, Maraven, and Pequiven. I started working in Corpoven. So I began my career in Corpoven. And those 4 companies then finally merged and became PDVSA, the National Oil Company. So now we have the era of PDVSA as a national company. In 1990, happened that there was an oil crisis, and Venezuela was having a very severe crisis because Venezuela always has been like this, depending on the fluctuation of the oil and gas. So in 1990, the president that was in that moment, he was a Democrat president, but he decided to revert the nationalization and do a privatization. They call it la apertura petrolera, the oil opening. That moment was where all the American companies came back. That is the era of ExxonMobil, Conoco, Chevron, the companies that today Trump is talking about. So this company came and did huge investment. That is true. I was there. I have been always there. For some reason, I always have been in those moments. So
Jose, was this a a U.S. State Department generated oil industry backed change that was forced on Venezuela, and then
and
this
that
question?
moment,
Yeah,
you're talking today or by that time?
back then,
No,
back
no,
then.
no,
So
no, 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 no,
it was
no.
just it was a true free market. We're going to open up
It
the.
was really true. That moment was really free. There were some tweaks. Let me tell you, there were some tweaks because the way the contracts were handled was always in the favor of the companies. There
Mhm.
was a lot of favor for the company, but let's say there was free bidding processes. But the truth of the matter that the companies came, and the truth is they invested huge amount of money. That is totally true. They invested huge amount of money, and there's where they rebuilt all the oil production of Venezuela. They created all the infrastructure, the new asset, the upgrader, the refiner, oil, the pipeline. So it became to be Venezuela began to be like Trump said was coming back again. That time was from 1990 to 2007. It was 17 years. During 17 years, all these companies work in Venezuela. It came massively companies. It came from all over the world, not only the US. Came companies from Europe, from the Middle East, from China, from Asia, from India, a lot of companies. And then Chavez came in 1998 and he respected that. He respected that for 9 years. So during the first 9 years of Chavez, he accepted the company's work as they were working normally. He didn't take care of that. But it came something that in Venezuela was called the paro petrolero, the national strike. When the national strike is that Chavez realized that he needed to have the control back to PDVSA because he knew that he didn't, having not the control of the oil production, he could lose his power. So he took the decision to go back and revert the privatization. And then is where they took all these companies, and there's where what Trump is talking today, that they stole the oil, that stole the asset. My friend, that's true.
I mean,
that's true.
There's
That's
really
true.
no other way to describe it. But they nationalized the assets, and nationalization is just a word for we're steal. The government
They stole it. They know name it nationalization, but was an expropriation.
Yes.
But was an expropriation without no payment. So the company was kicked out, and now this is mine. And that's why they did these big lawsuits, national arbitration, Conoco, ExxonMobil, and all these companies, because they were asking, give me, at least give me my money back, you know. And they have decades fighting for that. We're talking from 2007 until today, almost 20 years. Almost 20 years. So when I hear Trump talking that, oh, okay, we're going to go back, maybe I don't know how legally it's going to be done, but from the point of view of what if I was Conoco, I was Chevron, not Chevron because Chevron is still there, maybe ExxonMobil and Conoco, they were kicked off. They were kicked off. They were stolen their assets. Literally, they took, this is mine, go away. This is mine now, and I took the control, and I didn't pay you nothing. Go away. So now these companies are thinking to come back. And I believe that they're going to give them back their assets, and they're going to restart the production, and they're going to be repaid the debt that they have, because their debt is still there. So I've been hearing, my friend, I'm going to be honest with this.
By the way, I want, just before we move on to that. So, I have friends in Venezuela, and I have a little bit of a back channel. And one of the things that my friend tells me is that after the assets were nationalized and after the foreign corporations were kicked over, and once the Venezuelan organized crime government tried to run these refineries and tried to run these production facilities, they couldn't. And they literally, in some cases, they literally blew them up accidentally.
Yeah.
And now they're all sitting there rusting. And my friend in Venezuela has to drive to Colombia to buy gas for her car, because the quality of the Venezuelan gas sold in Venezuela to the Venezuelan people is so poor that it would ruin her automobile. So once or twice a week, or sorry, once or a week or every 2 weeks, she has to drive to neighboring Colombia to get gas, because Venezuela cannot even produce gas for its own citizens.
This
With
is
the largest
so
proven
it's so
oil reserves
ridiculous.
on the planet.
Let me tell you, this is so ridiculous, because I remember the Rockefeller one they said that the best business in the world is a oil business, and the second best business of the world is an oil business run wrongly. So even if you do it wrong, it's gonna be good. But these guys were so bad; they ruined. It's unbelievable. Why happened that? Because Chavez did the nationalization. In the first years, the foreign company, they stayed as a partner, a minority partner. They were still there. There were technicians, there were Venezuelans, a lot of Venezuelans with a lot of capabilities. But then came all this corrupt system and all this political communist things around. They begin to appoint people they didn't have no clue what was around. I'm going to tell you something. When I was here in Citgo, they appointed a general in charge of he began to be my liaison with PDVSA. So one day I flew to Venezuela to make a presentation to this new guy to talk about what Citgo was. And the guy told me, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. He was a military. He didn't have no F clue I was talking about. I was so frustrated that my boss was a guy that didn't have no clue. So he was appointed because he was a supporter of Maduro. That's it, period. So that's why they destroyed the company, because they put people that don't have no clue about a business that is so complex, like the oil and gas business. Because the oil and gas business is not only running the wells, it's all the strategic behind and the producing and the strategic to selling, to produce it, the quality of the oil, what you're talking about, the gas. They don't have people. What I heard is that the Chinese and the Iranian were running the refineries because they didn't have nobody to run. Why? Because all the Venezuelans, they knew, they had the expertise, or well kick off, or they run the country because they had to run outside the country because they begin to put people in jail. So this guy did a total disaster, a total disaster. If you ask me how I think it's gonna play from now, this company are gonna come back. I don't know. They're gonna be signed some new contracts. They're gonna revert and give their asset back, the asset that were stolen. We're gonna bring their management team. The Venezuelans that are already all over the world, we're gonna come back to play the roles that they had
Well,
in the past.
let's set the stage for a second, because for people that might not have been paying attention, what appears to happen is a deal was struck with the vice president of Venezuela and the military, where they stood down the military defenses that would have been able to engage a helicopter armada coming into the country, and they allowed Maduro to be taken. Now, I'm going to give some speculation right now. I have a feeling that the military generals and the vice president of Venezuela were probably offered a deal, and the deal was something like this: you're either going to be fabulously wealthy, or we're going to kill you. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the rod of God. But years ago, the former head, the guy that named the Star Wars program, he spoke openly because it had been reported in another publication, so he could talk about it for the first time. And he disclosed that there's a U.S. Military satellite program called the Rod of God that drops a depleted uranium bolt. But once it hits the gravity well, it starts moving so fast that they can put one kind of anywhere on the planet, and it produces something like a little mini nuclear explosion. It's not actually, it's a depleted uranium bolt, but it's not a nuclear. It's just so much, it hits with such impact from the ability of dropping it from the gravity well of the upper atmosphere, that it can just take out anybody at any time. And so I think that most most foreign leaders that are in the position of the vice president of Venezuela and the military leadership of Venezuela, I think they all know about this. And I think they all understand what happens if you don't play ball with the U.S.
Well, but let me tell you something. They extracted so easy Maduro that these guys don't have all those Cuban. He had like 200 Cubans with him. So
Yeah,
they took him in 15 minutes.
yeah. There was obviously a stand down. They obviously let him go, or sold him, or
They
gave
sold
him
him. They
up.
sold him. They
Yeah,
sold him.
they like something happened. And like I said, I think that that this is the harsh reality of the organized crime U.S. government is we we're going to steal this oil. You're going to participate with us, or we are going to kill you. And so I mean, there's really not a lot that other countries can do to resist that level of kind of murderous murderous threats and so that's the kind of the position that we're in. And so now Trump has said publicly that U.S. oil companies are going back to Venezuela and that the U.S. taxpayer may be on the hook, that we would pay to rebuild the Venezuelan oil infrastructure and
That's the part I
refining
don't.
infrastructure. And so it's quite brazen in that whatever deal that the owners of these foreign companies, the banks that own, if you go and take a look at who are the majority owners, it is BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street and others. And so the banks that I think are driving this policy are even so brazen as to stick the taxpayer with the bill for what usually and customarily would have been investment from the multi-billion-dollar very wealthy oil companies, but now they're actually going to stick the American taxpayer with the bill. And so maybe you could tell us what you think that's going to look like, who is going to benefit, which companies are poised to come in. What's your take on
The
Trump's
companies that are going to
promise to
come
pay
for
for new
sure
oil
are
infrastructure?
the companies that are returning are going to be the same that were expelled. ConocoPhillips and Exxon and Chevron are the three in the row. Baker Hughes, Halliburton, BJ Service, all these Flint, all these companies. Venezuela used to have a lot of American companies, my friend. There's an area in the southern area where it's the biggest oil reserve that called El Tigre en Anaco. By the way, my wife is born in El Tigre, and I lived there a lot of years. And there were a lot of American companies, a lot. There was hundreds of American companies. All these companies were gone. All these companies went to return because if they give them now the ability to rescue their assets and restart their business, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. Definitely, they're going to do it. How, from the legal standpoint of view, how it's going to be done, I don't know. I don't know what they're thinking, but they're going to be there. They're going to put their office there.
Now, Jose, who's the loser in all this? So explain to our audiences, where was the Venezuelan oil going before, and who was really seeing the lion's share of the profits? Who's
Let
who's
me
win? We're talking about who's about to start winning, who's about to start losing.
well, let me tell you four countries that are going to lose because there are four countries that were literally having a party with the Venezuelan oil: China, Russia, Iran, and Cuba. Let's begin with Cuba. This is the worst case. Cuba was having the oil for free. They were not paying. Free, Free, free. So the Cubans were literally stealing the oil because they received the oil and then they used some part and the other they sold it. So they got the money for them. So we were literally giving them the oil free to the Cubans. They're going to lose. The Iranians, they were selling weapons, uh, radars and satellite, whatever. Also the Russian. I don't know how it worked because they didn't use nothing to extract Maduro, none of the, anti-missile barrier, whatever, nothing worked. So I don't know what those weapons are. Iran and Russia. And China during Chavez, it gave a massive multi-billion loan that was called the Fondo Chino, the Chinese fund. That fund was supposedly to develop Venezuela. They stole the money. But the Chinese were getting their money back with oil. They're going to lose that too. And Trump said, we're going to sell them oil, but in market prices, in market normal conditions. So these four countries are going to lose: Cuba, Iran, China, and Russia. Because if they want to continue receiving the oil, they're going to revisit the contracts, the way they're doing business.
Now, I suppose we probably should have started with this question, but I want to get your take on it. Now, the original the official story is that we did this because Maduro was involved in the drug trade and was
Do
shipping
you
fentanyl
remember
in the United States.
the chemical weapon of massive
The chemical
destruction?
weapons. Now, what's interesting today, on Tuesday, January 6th, is that the federal indictment against Maduro has come out, and all of that has disappeared. And so there is no more talk of him being the head of a made up cartel called the Cartel of the Sun, or whatever they were alleging in this kind of really public relations campaign. And even to the point of, I hate to say it, but I think that they were blowing up these drug boats, which may or may not have been drug boats, which may or may not have been CIA drug boats, which may or may not have been, they could have been fishing ships. Nobody really knows, because they weren't seized. There was no public investigation. There was no trial. There was just extrajudicial murder that kept this and really set the stage in the people's mind, and the average person that's not really paying attention, doesn't really understand what's going on. Now there's so much drugs that are flowing out of Venezuela that we have to be blowing up the boats,
Well,
and that Maduro is shipping so many drugs in.
but the truth of the matter, let me tell you, even I don't have element to say if there were not, but the truth of the matter, my friend, is that the drug business is real. It's real. My eldest son, his wife, his family lives in the area where they have that uh, oil embarkations during years. I have been hearing this for years. And the thing of the Cartel of los Soles, I have been hearing that for years. Everybody in Venezuela has been hearing that for years. It pop up now, as you said, as a PR campaign. That is true, but it's real. That existed. I don't know if that was only the masquerade reason that Trump used. But the thing that they were running drugs and that the cartels soles were producing, that is real. That is real.
Now, but
maybe it's not the main reason. Maybe it's not the main reason. I don't know. Maybe it could be the secondary reason. The real reason was the oil. But the truth of the matter, that this is a real. It's real. And in the all the investigations that have been done, everything was pointed not only to Maduro, mostly more to the other guy, Diosdado Cabello. He's the real leader.
Who's that?
Diosdado Cabello. That is like he's like the third on board, but he's the real mastermind. Diosdado Cabello, because was Maduro and Delcy. Delcy was the formal vice president, but the real power is this guy, Diosdado Cabello. And he's the leader of that. He is the real leader of that.
So you believe that the government was exporting drugs?
Yes.
And there were high level government officials
yes,
involved in it.
Yes.
Did it go to Maduro? Did it go all the way up to Maduro, or
I
was
don't
Maduro
know
the
how.
puppet of these?
I'm not sure. I cannot say it because, of course, I don't have the evidence. But for sure, in the apparatus of the government, they were dealing with this. They were using PDVSA installation. They were using military installations. So the dream of Pablo Escobar, this guy made it true. Mm-hmm. Because Pablo Escobar wanted to create a narco state. This guy did it. They did it. And you can talk with any Venezuelan will know this. This is something that I was surprised how it took so long to pop up. Because this is something that we have been hearing this since years in Venezuela. You talk to any Venezuelan about the Cartel de los Soles, he will tell you, I know that 20 years ago. 20 years ago. So this is not new, is what I'm going to say. It's not new.
Well, it has
I don't know
disappeared.
if I
It
don't
has
know if that
disappeared
may I don't know if
completely.
it's the main reason. I don't know if it's a PR reason, but this is a phenomenon that is true.
So the indictment, like as I mentioned, the U.S. has now formally indicted
And
Maduro, and all
what
of
are the
that,
reason
all of
for
it
the
has
indictment?
disappeared.
What are the new reason of the indictment?
Uh, I don't I don't remember the specific charges as much as the kind of the I'm spoiling the headline. I'm leading with the punchline. The punchline is that all mentions of the Cartel de Soles has now disappeared, and now it's for other reasons than
Oh
what
well,
the U.S. has stated the entire time.
I don't know because well, let me research on that. But the reason the Cartel de los Soles is real. It's real. I don't know how much involvement this guy had, but it's real. And Diosdado Cabello is the leader of that thing. He was the guy, and the son of Nicolas Maduro. You know, his son that is called Nicolasito.
Mhm.
That he is very involved in that, and his nephews. My friend, I came back to a prisoner swap for the two nephews of Maduro that were indicted here for drug. They were captured in a uncover operation of the DEA.
That
That
really? Oh,
yes.
can you bring some? Yeah, please tell people a little bit about that.
Well, you know, I could come back in October 1st because when we were during those 5 years, there was an ambassador that was appointed by Trump and ratified by Biden. His name is Ambassador Roger Carson. He was taking care of the negotiation to release us. And they were back and forward negotiating things. That the final negotiation we were swapped by the two nephews of Maduro. They were indicted here in a federal prison in Florida. They were capturing a cover operation of the DEA. So they were captured with drugs.
Mm.
And they were in prison here. And they signed a presidential pardon to release them. And they swapped us. That's how you are talking today with me.
That is absolutely fascinating. Now, so because I know we're almost at the end of the hour, what else should people understand about the political situation, about the future of the oil industry in Venezuela? What did I forget to ask you, and what do you want people to know?
Even the people can think, oh, the Americans are going to steal the oil. I'm going to tell you something. These other guys were stealing the oil during more than 20 years. So if the American company come and bring money and to reinvest and to rebuild the oil industry, and the Venezuelan that lost their job come back and the Venezuelan will not care. They want their country back. They want the country back and wealthy. The people will not care. The people want to be with peace, have food in their table. They're starving today. Need their family reunited. So it's going to be a transition process. But this is done right, no matter the reasons, if it's done right, the Venezuelan will approve it because they have 25 years suffering.
Now, the final thing I think is interesting from my friend, the conversation that I had with my friend, is that the existing government, essentially the existing government of Venezuela, has not gone away, and they're very, very corrupt. And my friend is very, very scared. And I understand that people are being arrested for WhatsApp is on their phone. I
Mm-hmm.
understand that
Mm-hmm.
the military is stopping people and searching their
Yeah.
phones actively to find people that have negative sentiments about the
Mm-hmm.
government, and the government has passed a law as of yesterday. And why don't you bring us up to speed on
Oh
what
yeah,
that
they
is?
approved yesterday a law that if they find you a WhatsApp or a text message with something against the government, you will go directly to jail without no trial. It's crazy. These guys, this is a transition government. I believe that this guy finally had to go. I don't know what is exactly the idea that Trump is having, But he said that he's running the country and he has a plan. And the plan has to be that this guy has to finally go, that he has to strike all these guys. And a new people, fresh people, a free election and a new government has to be in place. This is the only way Venezuela will be come back again.
An easily rigged election. So yeah,
Had
anyway, this has been absolutely a fascinating conversation, and I think a timely one. And I think that you have helped people understand the situation on the ground more than anything that I've seen on any television station or boil down so far. Tell people how they can find, tell my audience how they can find you, and tell them what you're up to
you can go
today.
to my webpage, joseconnect.com. And if you want to know more, book a call with me. We can have a conversation. Yeah. And if you want me to come to any stage to talk about this, if anybody that's hearing this, oh, I want to bring this guy to do a conference, call me and I will go. Because I want to give clarity of what's going on. There is a lot of fake news around. There are things that are not true. We, the Venezuelan, know what's going on in our country. There are things that the people are confused. The people that live in Venezuela, the problem that they have, that they don't have access to the news, so they don't know what's going on. They're totally confused.
My
And we
friend
go,
says they get all of their news from social media.
no, and friends having, but now they have problem because if they find something in WhatsApp, they can go to jail. You know.
Yep. Well, thank
It,
you for your audience. My name is Etienne de la Bouissie. I am the founder of the Art of Liberty Foundation. As I mentioned, we're a principled, voluntarist public policy organization. We expose the illegitimacy and the criminality of government, the fact that it is being used as a technique to rob and control populations, and the fact that you don't really need government, and also the kind of the overt criminality in the DC in what is being run out of DC, whether you believe in having a government or not. What we have right now is a government openly being run as a criminal enterprise, where trillions of dollars are going out the back door to identifiable groups in a kind of organized crime system. You can find out information about us at artofliberty.org, and you can get my book, Government, the Biggest Scam in History, at government-scam.com. And you can get my brand new book, To See the Cages, to Leave It, 25 Techniques the Few Use to Control the Many, at seethecage.com. This article with a full transcript will be appearing on our Substack at artofliberty.substack.com.
JoseConnect.com. Contact me. Thank you. Bye, my friend.